I'm Joseph Humidi here in my office at Regent University, and I'm with Pastor Joseph Perry, also a author with his wife, and also the lead founder for Serve, which really has a impact of releasing the church into the marketplace and the fivefold effect. But fivefold is the topic for today. So Joseph, I'd like to help our audience understand what is fivefold ministry and why is it important for the church or for the Christians today?
Sure. So the fivefold, it's a term that we use today to talk about the 5 leadership equipping gifts that are mentioned by Paul in Ephesians 4, chapter 11. And it says that when Jesus ascended, he gave gifts to men, and these gifts are the apostle, prophet, evangelist, pastor, and teacher. And it says that these are actually given to equip the saints for the work of the ministry and to help them become mature. In fact, what I realized recently is that until the saints start doing the work of the ministry, they'll never actually reach the maturity. So we need all 5. So if we're missing even one of these, or if we don't understand these or understand our gift and what our role is, then we can't help equip the saints to do it.
I think if you took the pillars as the fivefold leadership giftings, there's usually at least 2 in a church, maybe 3.
Yeah.
Pastor, teacher, evangelist.
Mm-hmm.
But apostle and prophet usually are something people don't know what it is, or don't know how to connect to it, or don't know how to raise it up within the local church. So what difference would it make for a church to get equipped in your training and actually understand how to raise up, embrace, and release these other pillars in the church or through the church? What difference would it make?
Yeah. Well, it's like I've heard a lot of stories of basketball players that had a lot of natural talent. They had a gift, and yet because they had a gift, they leaned on their gift, but they never developed their gift. They didn't really understand why it was important to dig in on that and kind of hone their gift or their skills. And in a lot of ways, it's interesting because I've noticed that over the last, I don't know how many decades, that every time somebody, we run off to Bible school, we get a degree or something, but we come out and we say, well, I feel a call to ministry. So that either means be a missionary or work in a pulpit. And so if we work in a pulpit, we call that a pastor. But a pastor really means shepherd, and not all the people that end up in the pulpit are shepherds. And so we've got a lot of different churches. So I've noticed that whoever's at the helm of the ship is steering the ship in whichever direction, so a teacher steers it one way, and he turns the sanctuary into a classroom. But the pastor, the shepherd, gets up there and he wants to build family communities. So he turns the sanctuary into a living room. The prophets, if they're doing it, they're focused on intimacy, being close to the Lord, so they turn it into a bedroom. So, it's all these different, it really affects how we do it. But what I've noticed we do today is we build out these pastoral teams when we're going to grow our churches even bigger and make them, have a structure in place. The problem with that is that we have these department heads and we call them pastors, and maybe they are pastors, maybe they're not actual shepherds at all. But even if they're all shepherds and we have these huge pastoral shepherd teams, we're still building our churches on only one gift. And so what tends to happen is we tend to focus on, it's like we want all the rivers flowing into our churches and nothing's flowing out. And so we get stagnant. And so when you have, like you were talking about, the apostolic and the prophetic gifts, those are the ones that help us to see what the Lord's doing and how to take that out and let the culture that's inside the church get outside the church and transform the rest of the culture.
Excellent. I love that explanation. What are some of the topics you're going to be touching on in this seminar?
Well, we're going to talk about apostolic teams. We're going to help people understand the distinctions between the different gifts. That no matter which gift, even, a lot of people think, well, hey, if I'm an apostle, then I can, I don't even need anybody else. I can run the whole show myself or whatever. And even apostles have weaknesses. So understanding our strengths and our weaknesses, that, apostles see big picture, teachers look more minutely to the details, and just understanding those things and how to work together. We'll be talking about apostolic structures and apostolic thinking, what it means to transform culture, what it means to disciple cities and nations, and how we can move from being doers to equippers. Because the way we've set things up, we've got a lot of people out there, shepherds and teachers and evangelists, but the problem is without apostolic thinking and apostolic paradigm, we tend to, rather than something popped up on the screen, so we tend to be doers instead of equippers. And I've noticed that the apostolic is what brings it in and says, hey guys, you're working too hard. You're trying to be more than God's called you to be. Here, you can be just the teacher, and you can leave the shepherding piece to a shepherd. And so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how this isn't about getting a group of 5 like major heavy hitters on your leadership team. So we're going to talk about how churches can do this if you only have 25 people in your church. That you don't have to have apostles in your church and prophets on staff and all these different things. So we'll talk about that and apostolic networks and bring. What we're gonna do is we're gonna provide you with the framework so that you can think within an apostolic paradigm rather than just a pastoral paradigm.
You know, I've taught here for almost 30 years and established a course based on Ephesians 4 that did that, but really. There's very few places that leaders, workers, pastors can go to get the kind of training that you're offering in this seminar.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed.
I really want to know what sense of kind of urgency you feel the church has to get this information. What difference would it make if it doesn't have it or if it does?
Yeah, the church is never going to reach full maturity. You know, we don't even have correct metrics because we're creating our metrics based off a couple of gifts, and we're not creating metrics based off what it means to really disciple nations, what it means to transform communities and cities, cultures, and build. We don't even understand the difference between church cultures and kingdom culture. There's a big difference, and we can get very religious and we can get stuck in our church traditions, but a kingdom culture transcends all of that because it's rooted in truth and in the presence of God. And so as we get back to that, the church is going to reach this level of health and effectiveness that we have never experienced before. And I believe we've never experienced it before. Now, I used to wonder about this because I used to think, well, if Paul wrote Ephesians 4 and he told all the people about all the fivefold gifts, then they must have been around. Why didn't Jesus come back then? Why didn't we do it then? And it's because the church hadn't become mature. The church had to be mobilized. And when you read the Acts, we call them the Acts of the Apostles for a reason. It wasn't the Acts of the Saints. But now is the time for an act of the saints. That's taking place. And so I believe that the Holy Spirit, and I've heard it for decades, but I see it happening today, the Holy Spirit really is moving from the pulpit to the pew. It's not that he's leaving the fivefold leaders, it's that leadership is changing in an apostolic paradigm, and instead of being doers, now they're coming underneath their people, and they're saying, rather than get you to fulfill my vision is to empower you to fulfill what God has called you to do. And the church just hasn't really been there before.
That's a timely explanation for a church that needs to be fully ready in our day. I could envision even a church or a few churches sending their staff teams, 2 or 3 people, 4 people.
Yeah.
Because just think of the conversations that would happen afterwards,
Yeah.
based on what happens to them there and talking to each other. So that would be a great way to do it, I think.
Yeah, we'd love to have some churches send their teams. I think if you don't have teams come, if you don't come with your team or send a team, I think you're gonna come out frustrated because you're going to hear what we're teaching, and then you're going to take it back and you're going to try and tell people. And the thing that people keep telling me is, I tell them, hey, you can do it. And they say, listen, I can tell them what you told me. I just can't tell them the way you told me. And I'm like, and then they say, would you please come tell them for me? So, you can kind of head that off at the pass and just bring your team. We're looking to have about 40 people, and we're probably going to cut it off about there. But registration is open. After this video, we'll put the live link in the description so they can register.
I'm so excited about this.
Every time I sit down with somebody, a pastor, a leader, and I talk about these things, I see them get so excited because it creates clarity for them.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to do, is we want to create clarity for you, because clarity is power.
Oh, I love it. Well, I really believe in this guy because he delivers a word that's not academic or theoretical. He's actually lived it out, and he networks with a lot of these leaders, and you're going to get what I call the heart of the Father through this fivefold equipping mandate. Not just titles, not just positioning, that kind of stuff. Well, I got a big name plaque on my desk saying I'm this or that. No, you're going to have an impartation of a heart to really mature people, equip people, serve people. The Father heart of God is going to come through this. I think it's going to be awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate that.